like to take this opportunity to introduce our lunch speakers. Mr. Ivan DeLoatch. Mr. DeLoatch is the Executive Director of the Federal Geographic Data Committee, or FGDC. The FGDC is the federal government's interagency committee that promotes the coordinated development, use, sharing, and dissemination of geospatial data on a national basis. FGDC is a 32-member interagency committee composed of representatives from the Executive Office of the President and cabinet level and independent federal agencies. It is responsible for the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, or NSPS, to enable the development and sharing of this nation's digital geographic information resources. Mr. DeLoatch has served as Executive Director of the FGDC for more than 12 years. Previously, he served as Chief of Data Acquisition Branch in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Environmental Information. MAPS and NSPS have been an integral of FGDC's stakeholder community, including participating in the development of the NSPI strategic plan. As members of COGO, our organization also helped facilitate a report card on NSPI. To discuss FGDC's activities and their impact on surveying and the geospatial community, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ivan DeLoatch.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. It's definitely a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. John has alluded to the C, MAP, and the NSPS as significant stakeholders in our community. And what I'd like to share with you this afternoon is some of the results of the actions that we've taken with the current strategic plan, but also share with you a little bit about future activity which we want to invite you again to participate in the framework in FY17. I think, as we all know, we're in the throes of political season and so we're expecting a change one way or the other. So what we'd like to do is to get ahead of that curve, and our goal is to prepare a set of recommendations for the transition and administration. So we're working with a number of activities this year to prepare for that. But before I do that, I think we're all in this room would honestly believe that this country is in need of a national spatial data infrastructure, very similar to the infrastructure we have in utilities, transportation, and finance. More importantly, I think we need to communicate that in that way, especially when we're dealing with folks who are not as technically capable as most of us in this room, but those of us who are making decisions about where we invest our resources, but also those who make decisions about dealing with some of the problems that we deal with in this country. I think most of us would honestly believe that geospatial information technology is an enabler that allows us to deal with some of those issues. So, just real quickly, when we talk about the NSPI, there are really 6 key components: partnership policies, procedures, standards, and data technology. I'll touch on a couple of those this afternoon in terms of some of the work that we've done over the past couple of years. And I will say that this work has not been capable, not been able, not been for a lot of representatives of small federal agencies actively participating, but also working with partners like MAPS as well as the NSPS and a number of others for part of our community. We've been on this journey for quite a while. The Federal Geographic Data Committee has been in place since 1990. But I will say over the past 8 years, this administration has been very supportive of the work that we've been doing. There's been a number of activities that have occurred since the administration started. First 4 months that it was in place, they established data.gov, which is a catalog of information, services, and data that primarily is about 8% geospatial. That came about because they had taken advantage of utilizing the geospatial one-stop capability that was in place during the Bush administration that was built on that. And as you can see from this timeline, there are a number of activities. I do apologize for those of you in the back of the room. This is not showing us because the key point is that this afternoon I want to talk a little bit about what we've done since 2008, more importantly about the actions that have taken place into the execution of the strategic plan. And a bit about where we are today in terms of 2016, and then some of the work we're going to do in preparation for 2017. So the focus for us over the last 3 years has been the most recent strategic plan. We started developing this plan back in 2013. Members from MAP as well as NSPS participated through the Master Geospatial Advisory Committee, but also through a series of leadership forums that we had executed where we invited folks in just to share some of their thoughts and ideas about what they believe the federal government should be focused on. And then the other twist to this particular plan is that recognizing that we're all the partners developing this guide, what we really wanted to do was focus on what was the federal government's role and responsibility, execute actions that we had control over and resources that were available to do that. During the execution of the plan, as you heard from Jonathan as well, that COGO had issued their report card. We took the report card on board as part of the work that we're doing and looking at some national data assets, and I'll talk about those in a few moments. And it was very helpful to kind of understand the perspective from the stakeholder community in terms of where we were developing the framework in these things. The framework is very important, has always been important in developing an SDI. But some of the work that we've been doing over these recent years, I don't think that was quite as prevalent as it should have been, especially in terms of how we communicate what we're doing in establishing master geospatial data asset management plan. So just real quickly, there were 3 key goals. We tried to keep this narrowly focused to ensure that we were able to execute on this in a very effective way. The first goal took steps to address shared services. And one of the key goals of that, one of the key objectives of that key goal was developing a interoperability reference architecture. That architecture was worked in collaboration, prepared in collaboration with the intel community as well as the Department of Homeland Security, with the goal and idea of developing systems that were interoperable, promoting standards and best practices that made sense. Another key objective on this particular goal was the enhancement and development of the geospatial platform. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Then, of course, as we all know, cloud computing is becoming a pretty key asset for all of us in terms of the ability to utilize that as a mechanism for sharing information, but also for executing applications, work that we do. And lastly, which I think is a key objective that we're still working through, and some work we need to do this year, is to look at multi-agency acquisition vehicles for interagency and intergovernmental purchase. That's a very challenging endeavor, but I think we're taking some steps now that's going to help us move in that space, identifying web services and data acquisitions that we think can be helpful, and also sharing that information to the marketplace with the geospatial platform. This is just this architecture of the hero, as I like to call it, is it's currently available in paper form, but the Department of Homeland Security, as we speak, are making this developing a web capability for the hero that will be available for public access and use as well. In terms of the platform, the first version of the platform was issued back in, I think, 2011. Version 3 of the platform was just released back in February. The intent, I should say here, is to really to provide access to authoritative, trusted data services, not only for federal government use, but also for our partners. The other key aspect of the platform was to develop a shared infrastructure for collaboration, which we have utilized in the past 12 months working with our federal agencies to develop communities around various data sets and various data needs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. So I think more importantly, it does provide a mechanism of collaboration. And I think that's going to be very important as we think about the next version of the strategic plan in 2017. A lot of thought and thinking has also gone into strategic sourcing. I think that would be something of interest to this particular group. There are a number of services that are currently available, but they are available in a mismatched way. I thought the thinking now is to try to synergize those services where it makes sense. Currently, have a service contract that can be repurposed and utilized by many of our agencies. marketplace capability on the platform now that's currently continuing to be enhanced to allow individuals outside of the federal government to understand what some of our investments are going, what some of our interests are in terms of data acquisition. And the enhancement for the marketplace will be released in May of this year as well. And again, there are 3 other service activities that are available that we're also providing as well for applications, project management, but also technical services as well. The second goal of the strategic plan has to deal with our national geospatial data assets. This is a requirement that was issued as part of the OMB Circle 816 supplemental guidance that was issued back in 2010. And the idea here was for the agencies to identify what they believe were nationally significant data sets and data themes. And we've identified about 177 data sets that are currently available through the platform and cataloged through the platform. And I'll talk more about those in a few moments in terms of how they're organized and some of the commitments there. Then the other objective, which many of us are interested in, as well as our friends at the Government Accountability Office, are identifying potentially or sometimes characterized as duplicative investments and opportunities for collaborative investments. Here, we really want to be able to maybe convey the message that is there really duplication or not? And I think for a number of years, we have not been able to answer that question. So we're taking steps to really holistically look at these data sets and be able to identify where it may or may not be duplication and be able to convey that data to support that conclusion. So as we look through and began to execute the portfolio management process, we really wanted to be able to identify better management practices that will lead to better outcomes. I always like to give John credit for his famous saying of you can't manage what you can't measure. So that kind of thinking has gone into this process, and we've taken that to heart because I think it is a true statement. So at least on a micro scale, we'll be able to take that on board by looking at what are the conditions of the data sets. We went through a number of practices to identify the framework themes, but also to begin to analyze those data themes in terms of where they are in the development process. And this slide here is really to convey the message that we're looking at data as a national asset and not just for any particular application. And we went through sort of a 4-step process, and I'll walk through each one of these in a moment. We want to look at what we identified as core data themes. We also wanted to agree on what the portfolio management process meant for us, because when you talk about portfolio management, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So we had to clearly define, at least from the federal government, what we believe was portfolio management for this instance. But then we went through a very significant exercise of evaluating all these data sets and data themes, organizing them in a way that we felt was best, not only to serve government needs, but also stakeholder needs. But last but not least, what I think is the most important, we began to develop a series of tools to help us monitor, to help report and also to monitor, to get a better sense of where we are and what we're doing. So the framework data themes that I think most of us would agree are really critical to the NSCI. These data themes have been identified for a number of years. They deal with cadastral, elevation, geodetic control, government units, hydrography, open imaging, and transportation. And these particular sets of data have been identified as framework because we believe that most applications or most instances where folks are utilizing geospatial information, these data sets come into play, data themes come into play. So they're really the foundational elements of the NSCI. So as we organized the portfolio management structure, we felt that it was helpful to have aligned with certain data themes. There are 16 data themes, which I'll share with you in a moment. And then there's a series of data sets that are associated with those data themes. And as I shared with you earlier, currently there are about 177 data sets associated with those themes. And those data sets evolve. They kind of come and go depending on the utility, but also depending on some of the nominations that are being made by the agencies in terms of wanting to characterize and classify those as authoritative data sets. And you can't see this too well, but these are the 16 data themes, and they're organized around issues like biota, hydrography, elevation, geodetic control, soils, real property. I won't name all of those, but before there were 34 data themes that were identified back in 2002. So we went through an evaluation process and recognized in terms of where we are today that the 16 data themes would be more appropriate for the work that we're doing in supporting the NSPS. So as we move forward, we thought that it was very helpful to start having tools for reporting and monitoring. And this is where the COGO report really was helpful. He gave us some qualitative standards by which they had utilized for understanding or trying to grade where we are in developing those data themes. We wanted to also embellish that with quantitative information. So we were able to start doing some assessments using various techniques, developing a dashboard to be able to share that information not only with our federal partners and soon to be released to the public as well. The FCDC is having a steering committee meeting in early April where this topic is on the agenda, and we're hoping that they'll see the value and actually begin to make this publicly available. We're still doing some quality control work on the assessments and also on the work there, but we believe that we're moving in the right direction to begin to share that information. There were a series of reports that were prepared that resulted from the baseline assessment of these data sets. And these baseline assessments were done around the life cycle, data life cycle maturity model. And we did find that there were many data sets that were in very good shape, and there were some data sets that are not. And that's okay. I mean, this is a baseline assessment. We're trying to get a better idea of where we are, where we need to go, and also have an honest conversation about what's really needed. So in taking that information, we thought it was very helpful to develop a dashboard. And this is sort of a high-level assessment from a quantitative point of view. We believe that additional work is going to be needed to build this out. But we sort of used a 1 to 5 scoring category. And rather than the typical stoplight approach where you're seeing red, green, and yellow, we decided to use different shades of green. Well, that makes a difference or not, I don't believe so, but it does sort of give you a sense of where we are in terms of a 1 to 5 scale, how the data sets are aligned with certain criteria. But I think one of the most telling, or I think good news story, as we began to continue to work with agencies and populate these data sets, and work with agencies to improve their metadata, the number of data sets that are now available have increased. From 2014 to 2016, we saw a significant increase on data that we have agreed that meets the criteria from about 40 data sets, about 90,000 data sets. So that's something that I believe that is very helpful in understanding of the value of conducting such an exercise, and also it gives the user an idea of the value of the condition of the data set in terms of where it is in meeting the life cycle, data life cycle management goals. So goal 3 really focused on communication as well as outreach. And one of the reasons I'm here today is this communication strategy was completed late last year. There's 3 key objectives there. Coordination is one of those, and working with national and international standards organizations. We have a very good, strong working relationship with the Open Geospatial Consortium as well as the ISO community, and we continue to build on that. I will also say that the National Geospatial Advisory Committee was very helpful in developing these goals and helping us to execute these goals, along with the rest of the stakeholder community as well. The other key objectives here are to lead leadership of convene, organize opportunities to do outreach and to share information with geospatial as well as non-spatial communities. I think one of the most advantageous steps in this process was to begin to look at public and private partnerships. When you hear public-private partnerships, again, that's a terminology that means different things to different folks, and we need to, at least from our perspective, define what that means and how do we do it within the legal constraints that we have in government. And then lastly, I think it's important that as we deal with people who don't speak this language, especially our political leaders, we be able to raise the awareness of the importance of the NSDI and the impacts it can have on national as well as international issues. So, and I think as we've learned over the years, in order to really develop the NSPI, you have to do it in partnership. And there are a number of roles and responsibilities for all of us in developing the NSPI. There's roles for the federal sector. There's roles for state and local governments. As John had mentioned in the introduction, there are about 32 agencies involved in the federal space. I will say that all of them are not active, and some of them are more active than others. I would say there are about 10 to 12 agencies that really take this on honestly and holistically, and we're still working to bring others on board and moving the NSPI forward. We've also had opportunities to work over the years with a number of organizations who represent state and locals, like this JIG, as well as the National League of Cities and NACO. But we need to do a better job of that. For a number of years, we had not done as much outreach due to a series of budget cuts, but also sequestration and a lot of those things impacted our ability to actually reach out. But we're starting to change that model again, recognize that this would never be a reality if we do not continue to work with our partners. And of course, the private professionals and organizations are critical. A number of you are associated with these organizations as well. I won't walk through all of these, but it's for us, I want to highlight the importance of where the paradigm has shifted over the years. Years ago, a lot of data was being produced and generated by the federal government. We're now seeing much of this information now being developed and organized, served up in the commercial sector. So we need to understand how do we take that on and utilize that in a way that makes sense. And what sort of business models do we put in place to take advantage of that. And with that, we're also taking steps this year to reach out and to work with CODO. We're very happy the MAPS and NSPS are part of CODO. We've had some preliminary conversations with the leadership of CODO to do three things. First, we want to work together to develop some common criteria or refine the criteria for the report card, recognizing that we want to exercise that process again with the idea of having a new report card issued by 2018. We also want them to be actively involved in developing of the NSPI framework in 2017. And then we also want them to be involved in helping us develop a series of ideas for the transition strategy or the transition recommendations for the next administration. So we're pretty excited about that and looking forward to working with all of you to move that forward. But I think as we think about NSPI, again, governance is very important, and not just federal government. This is shared governance. I think we all need to understand what our roles and responsibilities in making this happen. I do not want to scare folks with this particular diagram, but it kind of gives you a sense of the number of components that are involved, and they all have a specific role and responsibility. I won't walk through all of these, but I did want to make a point this afternoon. I think about what I believe are the subcommittees' roles, which I think are very important in executing the work on the ground. Here's where I think most of the partnerships occur. Here's where I think a lot of the development of data will happen. And we always like to highlight, the work that we've been done with a number of our partners, and communication strategy is important. And we see the four cornerstones as part of this communication strategy. We need to increase awareness, to highlight the value of collaboration with our communities. We need to educate our leaders as well as those who are new users. I think most of us would agree that this technology has grown quite a bit over the past 5 to 10 years. There are a whole new set of users. And then for the NSPI to be reality, it's going to have to be built on partnerships, and that's something that we think we need to work on much more earnestly and much more holistically to make that happen. So I like to use this slide to highlight the fact that we continue to see the framework data sets as key to the work that we're doing. These are the subcommittees that have the leadership role in developing and organizing the data themes. The subcommittees that are starred are those who will represent those framework data subcommittees or framework data sets that are being led by these groups. And I think all of us have seen a lot of good work done by the 3D Nation Innovation Subcommittee over the past year and a half. This is a subcommittee that's being led by my colleagues at USGS as well as NOAA. I think it serves as a good model for the other subcommittees and the other data teams. They've done a great job of developing a business case, and also a good job of executing what's required to coordinate and to bring folks on board, to think outside the box in terms of how you do public-private partnerships. And we like to highlight this as an area that we think could be utilized in a number of the other data themes. So where are we today? To get back into the magnifying glass and keep us focused. For this year, the FTDC has identified four key priorities. The first being data initiatives that we'd like to get completed before this administration sunsets. So we're working very hard to organize, at least begin to start the process of developing a national address database. That's going to be a tough one, because addresses being different, a lot of different folks. And our colleagues at the Department of Transportation and the Census Bureau are leading that effort. We'll continue to provide a lot of focus and work on the 3D elevation program. Seeing that, of course, LiDAR has, again, another new technology that's beginning to have huge benefits in terms of the work we do. Open Water Data Initiative was an initiative launched by the Department of Interior a couple of years ago. It's continued to get a lot of traction. In fact, it's one of the efforts will be highlighted, I think, next week on March 22nd with the White House's Water Summit that's being conducted next week. We'll continue to execute our communication strategy. You can never communicate enough in this space and make these things happen. The geospatial platform will also be a priority for us. And then, I think last but not least, is that we'll continue to execute balance of the strategic planning process, but also developing a transition strategy for the next administration. So with that, just to conclude, this is where we are, our game plan in developing this strategic framework. As you can see, the first, in March 2016, we're currently launching this, doing some of the planning. We're expecting next month to begin to work with the National Geospatial Advisory Committee as well as the Steering Committee. And then we'll invite a number of folks from your organizations to engage in us in outreach and stakeholder engagement between April and June, with the goal of, again, touching base with the NGAC in June, developing, hopefully having a pretty good draft of the framework by summertime, and then continue to work and refine that through September with the goal of having a framework and a transition strategy ready for the next administration by the end of the calendar year. And this is somewhat of a simplified road to the end, but there's a lot of work that has to go on, a lot of engagement, and a lot of activities that we're conducting over the next several months. One of the things that we are doing that we think is very important is that we're evaluating the current outcomes of the strategic plan, what worked, what didn't work, and develop a set of lessons learned, and then also make changes to the new framework based on that feedback. And that's going to require us to engage, assess, and also to collaborate, and then align those priorities as we see fit. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to share. I know that was kind of pretty quickly walking through a lot of work that's occurred over the past several years, but I think the final message is that we welcome all your inputs, and we're looking forward to engaging with you as we continue to develop this framework. So we're more than happy to take any questions.
Right here. I'm afraid I know the answer to this question. Given the outreach that I know you want to do and have tried to do for many, many years, everybody in this room and attending this event obviously realizes the importance of NSDI and how things have been evolving. So the spatial integrity, the spatial relationship of things are becoming vastly more important than they ever were. The National GI Survey is in the process of changing the reference frames for the United States. It's going to have a huge impact. I was the chief GI surveyor at NGS. Over the last 3 years, I've had a lot of opportunities to go around the country giving a lot of outreach workshops and seminars, and I've engaged with many federal employees over that time, engaged in obviously surveying and mapping, and almost none of them know about what's coming down the road. And realizing NGS has a tiny, tiny budget and capacity for this kind of outreach, what efforts can you provide in that broader bully pulpit to make them understand. This is going to be a big deal for everybody in the groups that you've been talking to.
Absolutely, and we've been made aware of that for our colleagues at Geodetic Control, but more importantly, our members of the National Geospatial Advisory Committee have raised this to us, that this is going to really impact us in a way that it's going to change a lot of things, and we cannot over-communicate about this, and we need to continue to do outreach. So that will be one of the priorities as well, of the NGAG, and a message that will be included in the strategy. And we have been working with our folks at NOAA, at Geodetic Control to convey that message. They have been in to do presentations for us. We're working with them and supporting them wherever we can as one of the subcommittees of Geodetic Control. But as I stated earlier, you can never over-communicate this stuff. I mean, it's so many people are going to be impacted, so many domains are going to be impacted that we see this as a critical point as well. Any additional questions?
Where's climate in your needs?
You know, we wrestled with that, and we saw that a number of these support climate. And I've been involved in a couple of efforts where we see climate as a societal benefit area, and more so than a data theme itself. So the approach that we're taking is that we're identifying which data themes can support the activities around climate. And a number of these data sets, as well as some of these data themes, have been a big part of the Climate Data Initiative that's currently in this administration. So we're linking it that way, and not specifically calling it out, but we recognize that a number of these data themes do support some of the activities in the climate space. Yes, sir.
Is parcel mapping still going to be an integral part of what the
Sorry, I couldn't hear the first.
parcel mapping?
Oh, parcel.
Yeah, I know it's push for a national
Where's
park.
John? I know you got. Yes. You know, it's an interesting topic because we all recognize the value of parcels, but in the federal government, no one particular agency has responsibility for that. But we have been working with our consumer financial CFP. We have been working with those with Michael Byrne, who has responsibility for the Space Commission in that space, and we're trying to come up with a creative way by which, from the federal government, we can try to organize and coordinate around parcels. I won't say we have the answer to that question, but you know, it is a burning question and one that we wrestle with for a number of years. But it's something that we need to think about because it's so important to a lot of us. So we've also been trying to involve housing and urban development, which, you know, again, is another agency that has a lot of need and are also collecting data as well. But there are also a number of commercial entities that offer that same capability. So how, you know, some discussions around public-public partnership around that, how we can do that more effectively. Yes, sir.
I can speak to that just a little bit, not to take away David Alexander's thunder on the agency briefings for DHS, but DHS has agreed to host a parcel summit in connection with MAPS that's supporting them sometime early summer, or late spring, early summer. More of that to come, but DHS has agreed to at least have some type of an active role in helping us to sort through some of the things that you're discussing.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, they did announce that during the ESRI conference. They are working with, they will be working with Michael as well as a couple other agencies and developing the agenda for that summit. So again, another opportunity to come up with some solutions and deal with this very challenging problem. Any additional questions, comments? Well, very well. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you this afternoon, and definitely look forward to working with you for the next development of the company.